Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about this really amazing new moon that's coming up this weekend on Sunday, the 27th of April. Let's go ahead and look at the chart right away. So let's see, you should be able to see the chart. And you can see right away, the first thing that strikes you probably is all of these planets in Aries. It's Of course, I'm counting also Jupiter and Venus being very close, within 3 degrees of this cusp, and so I consider them to be part of the next house. A lot of astrologers agree with that. It's sometimes called the 5-degree rule, which would be, we'd even extend it to 5 degrees. I tend to use 3, being a little bit more conservative about it. We're leaving, for example, this 26 degrees of Pisces, 46 minutes, the North Node. We're leaving that out of this. But, you know, these are close enough to the cusp. And really, if you're looking at a chart with the time on it and you see the ascendant, if they're that close, they're really part of the ascendant. So that way, you can maybe see what it's getting at here, that these are really, and by the way, these are really part of the first house. And I can show you how that works in terms of the TimePassages options, just to show you this. So in the display options, we have what's called a house margin setting. And it is set to 3 degrees. That's my preferred setting. And we're applying it to whole sign houses as well. If we didn't, things would shift. You see the shift there? We could shift them to be just in their actual sign, because sometimes people like to look at it that way for sure. We want to make that optional rather than required, but it is available to you. I believe it might be safe to say that no other software has this in their display options, but we do. And so we'll shift it back the way it was. And so here we have such a huge stellium of planets, especially counting these two that are on the edge, in Aries, including Neptune, just recently joined into Aries, now still at 0 degrees, but about to be at 1 degree of Pisces. I'm sorry, of Aries, I mean, of course. So anyway, Neptune rules Pisces. So anyway, we do have this incredible stellium. We have the new moon in Taurus, and we have additionally, at another fixed sign, at Leo, at 4 degrees of Leo, we have Mars, so therefore square to this new moon degree, but also opposite, very closely opposite to Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a T-square in fixed signs. It's actually, if you count Haumea, which is this new 21st century planet that's very much important in charts going to depth within the psyche, as I have been able to show in articles. And also we have Maki Maki. So this is Haumea, this is Maki Maki. These are alternative glyphs of my own design, in this case, recommended by Philip Sedgwick in this case for Maki Maki, because they had the Birdman cult. This is sort of like a Birdman. And this is sort of like a pregnant lady, because she gave birth from all different parts of her body. She's the creation goddess of the Hawaii mythology, and the mother of Pele, the mother or grandmother of quite a few of the Hawaiian gods and goddesses. And she represented to them simply nature. She had a magic wand that could make food appear, which is in mimicry of the food that was readily available in the jungles of Hawaii, of course, both flora and fauna. And, she also gave birth from all different parts of her body and then regenerated as a young woman again. So she was capable of giving forth new forms as nature is, yet always staying the same in another way as nature does. So representing nature, and that's what they thought too, that she represented the sky, the land, the sea, everything. So very interesting, because the connection to nature is something that's been neglected in this society with this materialistic focus. And really it comes down to a mystical connection to things, which we have to recognize that in a way nature is mystical, and in a way nature represents another dimension to us, not a purely rational dimension, more of an organic, holistic dimension, more of a mystical dimension. So this is very, very important to today's world, and the fact that it's in this grand cross, the square with Pluto has been around for quite a while. It's been very close, and now it's about 1.5 degrees off here. And I've been able to demonstrate that this square, when it's activated, which it is in this new moon, represents really a question of understanding where there may have been deception, where there may have been lies, and getting to the truth of the matter. The lies exposed is what I've seen with this square, so we can look for that in the coming weeks of the May month represented by this new moon. And we can see how much that may be true, that certain things that were stated routinely, and they may have been misleading, they may have been misinformation, they may have been disinformation, they may have been just partially true, but leaving out the context, which is another kind of deception. Those things can get exposed to the light of day. And it's because with Pluto, we see the underside of things, the seamy underside, the manipulative part of it, and that comes out. And with a square, it means there's an activation between these archetypes. And we can talk about the rest of these elements as well. I mean, of course, there's so many combinations in this new moon. The one that is also in this Grand Cross is Mars opposite Pluto, and that's something worth mentioning because that can actually be passion, creativity, but it can also be anger, buried anger coming out. So we want to be careful with our words over this next month. We want to say, there may be feelings. We may want to question those feelings. If anger comes up, we may want to try to understand better where it's coming from within us. What is the trigger within us, which was maybe an old wound that could have been involved in that, you see. And so, really we're never angry for the reason that we think we are. And if we can hold on to that truth in the midst of being triggered, we're ahead of the game, and we can maybe count to 10, as they say. We can maybe take that step back instead of jumping ahead with our blurting out something that later we could regret having said those words, which you can't really take them back, although you can try to repair. But anyway, that's a factor in this, definitely in this new moon, is the Mars opposite to Pluto, and also bringing out the transformational qualities of Pluto as far as that goes. In Aquarius, wherever that lands in your chart, in the general chart that we might conceive of, it represents the 11th house, Aquarius being the 11th sign. And that is actually something to think about also, that there's a way that society is radically shifting at this time with Pluto coming into Aquarius. Pluto into Capricorn was 2008, and it accompanied a sort of a capitalist banking crash that happened then. There was some serious economic problems. And what we're seeing now, I believe, is we're seeing a big debate going on, a big transition going on. What do we want our society to represent? How do we want it to represent us? How can we participate in our society in a meaningful way? How can we be part of a social movement that articulates the values that we espouse? That this is what's going on right now. And then, in two, we'd want to represent the fact that this new moon being in Taurus does bring an element of stability to the situation, a bodily element, with Taurus, earth sign, to the situation, that we really are very much as well in our bodies right now and seeking the stability of what we can come to in that way, taking care of ourselves physically is very important right now also, and not to be neglected as being a serious part of this new moon configuration that we see here. Well, thinking about Taurus, we also think about Venus, the ruler of Taurus, and Venus is quite activated here too. It is, if you look in one direction, a conjunction with Saturn and the North Node, meaning limitation, meaning contraction. If you look at it in the other direction, we see Neptune. It is 2 degrees conjunct Neptune as well, 2.5. So this is a very, very, very strong Venus being recently come to a heliacal rise as well. So we have a Pisces Venus that is kind of the flavor of Venus now, meaning otherworldly, other dimensional. What we have is we have the rational and we have the here and now and the 3D reality, but we also have beyond this physical reality represented by Neptune. And represented by Venus, Neptune, you can even think of this as almost a call from the beyond, a call from the larger body of the universe to think about bigger things, to think about the whole picture, to think about compassion, to think about oneness, to think, well, we are really only one of us here, as they say in New Thought sometimes. On the other hand, with Saturn, it gets to be more pinned down, more practical. We can be limited in the expression of our compassion. We can be limited and contracted in our enjoyment of life and our feeling of oneness and our feeling of beauty with connection to others, our sense of aesthetics. So it can be kind of a contraction at the same time, a narrowing down. And in fact, we do see that Saturn is moving toward Neptune, faster obviously than Neptune, being much faster, a 30-year orbital period. On May 24th of the next month, about a month from now, a month from this new moon, a little bit less than a month, it comes into the Aries sign, and of course by that time also we'll have like 1.5, Neptune will be like at 1.5 degrees, but what we have there is Saturn-Neptune, and it's very interesting because they are antithetical. They represent, as I was saying before a minute ago, the physical here and now and also the beyond that. So in a way they contradict each other, in a way they also contribute to each other. So we can think of the non-rational versus the rational. We can think of polarities in that way. We can think of one factor that is more reflexive and imagistic and gestalt, which is more the Neptune, versus a more rational, hard-headed attempt at realism, which is the Saturn. So we can actually, and one can be more rational than the other, so we can really see two different sides to things. And Rick Tarnas wrote about this. He wrote about combinations of planets in cosmos and psyche. He did not mention Saturn-Neptune per se, but he actually, in an article which was sort of an addendum to the publication of Cosmos and Psyche, an article of his that came out in 2016, he talked about Saturn-Neptune, and he talked about it in the context of the 2004 opposition, which was the second term of George W. Bush, which was the first time that it was really very popular in the culture, in the zeitgeist, to say red states versus blue states and really identify two camps. And what he said in his description of this Saturn-Neptune was, he said very clearly, and I thought it was brilliant, that we have almost two different realities that are so different from each other that the one side cannot really even see how the other side can think that way. Both sides could be looking at the other one saying, what the heck, what is this? And we have that today as well, very, very much, of course, the polarity. And you could also define it as rigidity, conflict, which would be the Saturn side, vision, belief, metaphysical reality becoming more clearly obvious, which is the Neptune side, and they contribute to each other. So we can have a conservative religiosity, which we do have going on right now, and we can have a metaphysically constrained over-rationalism, perhaps, or just a sense of rationalism that opposes that simple belief idea. So anyway, and they contribute to each other. So in other words, in a way, it's bringing the metaphysical image, reality that is beyond, it's bringing it more into concrete manifestation, as mythology does. So a recognition of mythology and the importance of mythology is another part of Saturn coming together with Neptune as that archetypal pairing. And the other very important archetypal pairing that is in this also is we have at 27 degrees of Pisces Saturn, at 26, about to be 27 degrees of Taurus, we have Uranus, and again, Uranus is rule breaking, rebellion, whereas Saturn is rule following. So we're enjoined in a sextile to each other, so there's a certain amount of harmony in it, but there's also the antithetical nature of these two archetypes. So at the same time as we have Saturn-Neptune, which, by the way, is beginning, as I say, the end of May, and gets to very close conjunction. They get to be 1/4 of a degree apart in July. So that is close enough to be talking about, even 15 degrees is the beginning of a sense of it. So when Saturn was back here in Neptune and the 15 degrees was reached, we've already been having this for quite a while, this sense of polarity, this sense of antithetical factors coming in where we can see the reality, the cold hard reality, and we can also see the metaphysical beyond the reality. I mean, we can tap into both of those, or we can see them in combination increasingly as they get closer and closer. And in July, as I say, it's a quarter of a degree apart. They don't actually touch until February of 2026. So there are very interesting combinations here, including, as I say, Saturn and Uranus, which again we have the surprise factor of Uranus, the unexpected. You know, the Grateful Dead have a terrific line in one of their songs. Once in a while, you can get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. And that's the trick, is looking at it right, being open to that almost intuitional, bold lightning strike of intuition epiphany that can come over us all at once and can really change things for us if we can see things in this new way. But we have to remember to stay open to that and not be discarding it as, oh, this is just a wild idea. Recognize that your intuition counts, that your intuition is very important. And this Uranus with Saturn becomes increasingly important as the month wears on, because we have the full moon, which is at 22 degrees, so closer yet to this. And then we have the sun being at 22, and then we have also the last quarter moon is where the sun gets to 29 degrees of Taurus. So at that point, it's very close. Uranus by that time is pretty much 27, as I recall. So I think that's very close. So we'd see as we go through this next month greater activations of Uranus, and it's always still in this strong connection to Saturn. So it's very interesting. It's like, is it reality, or is it just a wild idea? or is it the reality that we are seeing when we have intuitional glimpses of this wild idea? So that's all a factor that's happening too. So let's see. I think I've said most of the things. I mean, it's very interesting also that if we look at Mars, we can see that Mars is very activated, being opposite Pluto. If we look at Venus, the opposite antithetical to Mars, we can see that that's very activated with outer planet connections. And then if we look too at Mercury, Mercury is opposite Makemake. So we have a strong activation of Haumea, which is connection to nature, connection also to our inner moral compass that we know about, that we know that there's a right thing to do here, and the connection to, in the past, lying, if we pick up on it and understand it, and then we say, no, that's not such a good way to go. And if we can see the exposing of the lies, and then we also, though, have Makemake being opposite to Mercury, which gives us a thought process which is very activist in nature. Makemake is similar to Haumea. It's also connection to nature, but it's connection to nature from the standpoint of acting on our own internal principles more than, it could be environmental activism, it could be social activism, but it's tuning in to what we really believe at our deepest level. These go to depth within the psyche, just like Pluto does, and just like Uranus does too. So the fact that Mercury is tuned into Makemake is interesting also in this particular new moon, because we may have impulses of activism. We may see crowds in the street. I've been saying that. Actually, it was activated also in the previous, I think it was new moon or full moon, maybe it was full moon. And I was saying, well, we could see crowds in the street, and we are seeing crowds in the street. Protests, so that we can get ourselves straight on what we're actually doing and what we actually believe is the right thing to do. So very interesting, is it not? Very interesting, all these intense patternings, intense archetypal combinations that we see in this new moon. And remember that the new moon does really start the lunation cycle of 30 days, which means it will really be active for almost the entire month of May. So that's what we got going here. So let's see. I think that was about all I had. There's so much, so much going on. I mean, also the transformation of Pluto. I mean, that's no matter how it lands, where it hits you. This is definitely a factor that we have to be paying close attention to as well. That we're in the process of transformation. Pluto is transformation. Pluto is very activated. And we are seeing what that means for us. In your natal chart, you can also look to where the beginning of Aquarius lies, and that's in that particular area of your life, or what connections it makes also to personal planets. What connections it makes are important in terms of the transformation of that area of life as represented by that planet. So let me see if I can get back to where we started here. And just to say, it's not an easy time. It can be desperate. It can feel desperate. You can feel the power of everything that's going down, and what can you do? Because one little person, what can one little person do? But the fact is, you're actually all powerful. The power of the collective, if everybody, let's say in this country, or let's say in the world, let's say in other countries as well, the power of their impression, especially in this country though, because we can all vote. So, at least so far we can all vote, and that is important because, they say that the power of the public and that impression that they have, the power of public opinion is great, as great as anything. And you're a part of that. So each one of us, as we have our thoughts, as we get centered on ourselves, as we get to understanding what our deepest principles are, and as we espouse them as much as we can say them, we can talk about them. Any conversation you have where you express what you really feel and where you feel sure about what you really feel is a positive thing, or at least it is along the lines of where you're thinking. You are affecting things in that way. So I say, we do have individual power to a much greater extent than we realize by our thought forms, by what we espouse, what we believe, what we take action regarding. If you go join that demonstration or that protest, you're adding to the situation, and if everybody did it, things would change in a moment. So we do have to kind of keep aware of that we have our power, and that we can. What we have to do is tune into where we stand, tune into what our deepest values are, and where we really, we really can say, this is where I draw the line. And once we can do that, we're kind of free in that way. So it's a great blessing. So we have so much blessings coming down upon us in the midst of so much difficult times as well. And we've got all of it. So best of luck with that. Talk soon. Take care.